Hi everyone! So today we're going to be reading a story about a princess who was also a little bit of a warrior. Oh, how exciting! Yes, it's very exciting, but I gotta tell you, Irma Jean, she's not really a princess like you. What do you mean? Well, she is a princess and she is small, yes, just like you, but she's kind of a warrior. She's a champion of her people, and even when they don't really think so. Oh, how interesting. Yes, it's very interesting. Of course, as always, our stories are sponsored by First 5 Yuba County, and this is one of our originals. So, as always, this story is about a real little girl, and I hope that you like it, Charlotte. Oh, yes! Okay, here we go. Champion Charlotte. Once upon a time, there was a very young, very small, very sweet princess. Oh! Her parents, the king and queen, had named her Charlotte, but most of the time they called her something else. Oh, what did they call her? Well, when she was born, Charlotte had come out tiny, pink, and screaming angrily. Like most babies. Yes, like most babies. Her parents laughed and cuddled her, declaring that she was a very fierce little girl indeed. They had no doubt she would grow up to be a mighty warrior and a champion of her people. And that was how she earned her nickname. They called her the Tiny Champion. Oh, that's adorable, isn't it? The people of their kingdom loved the royal family, but they found this nickname very odd. The princess was fierce, smart, and kind, but a mighty champion? They laughed to think of it. What? How dare they? How dare they? A princess can be anything she chooses. Honestly, I am a journalist, and no one expected that. Why can't a princess be a champion? You of course, are right, Irma Jean. It's okay. You know what? She's going to prove herself. I'm sure she will. Okay, so let's see what happens, huh? So, the people had their doubts. Charlotte, however, was determined to prove herself the warrior her parents believed her to be. Every day she practiced sword fighting in the royal garden, vigorously waving her small wooden sword. The royal guards laughed as they watched the tiny princess and told her she was too small to be a proper swordsman. Maybe when you're bigger, they said. It's okay. Charlotte ignored them, as well she should, and continued to practice with her sword every day, feeling her movements becoming more precise. Of course, that's what happens when you practice, you know. Yes, you are correct. Practicing is always a good idea. She also ran laps around the courtyard to help develop her petite muscles. The royal messengers chuckled, flying past with great speed as they performed their own exercises. You'll never be able to keep up, they smiled. You're too slow. But Charlotte continued to run with them every day, getting a little faster each time. The tiny princess made sure to spend a lot of time with her tutors, too, to develop her mind. Oh, that's very important. Do stay in school, children. Yes, that is important. She knew that a champion needed to be able to create clever battle plans and think quickly in the moment. Oh, journalists do that too, you know. I'm sure they do. Her tutors were happy to teach her, but they preferred she learn things like knitting, dancing, and how to curtsy properly. Well, those are very important skills. Girls, they said, had no need of geography or mathematics, and certainly did not need to study the art of war. Especially very young, very small, very sweet girls like Charlotte. How dare they? So she studied on her own. She pored over books of battle tactics, local geography, physics, and combat maneuvers. Whoa, all that! Yes, all that. And she was still very young and very small, but she had a very good mind. And despite her tutor's assurances that girls were no good at learning such things, the princess's mind grew quicker and sharper. Here's the secret, kids. Girls are actually much, much smarter than most people realize. In fact, look out, boys, because we're coming for you. That's really not a competition. Everybody is smart. Everybody has their own talents. Everybody is capable of great things. Except maybe those stubborn guards and tutors. Maybe. Her parents were very proud of her. Our tiny champion, they smiled as they tucked her into bed at night. You can do anything you put your mind to. Sometimes, though, Charlotte wondered. She knew her muscles and her mind were improving every day, but she was still a very small, very young, very sweet little girl. And when so many of her own people didn't believe in her, it could be hard to believe in herself. That's very true. But then, one day, a huge creature appeared at the gates of the city. Oh no! It was enormous and furry with large pointed teeth and wild eyes. Oh, terrifying! It burst past the guards and began moving through the streets, crashing into signposts and knocking over barrels. Not the barrels! The people started screaming and ran away in terror. A crowd quickly formed outside the palace with people shouting for help from the king. Princess Charlotte heard the commotion and peeked through her window to see what was happening. It was hard to understand at first with all the crying and shouting, but when she was finally able to piece together the full story, that a monster was attacking the city, she realized that this was her chance. She could finally prove that she was the champion her parents believed her to be. No, don't do it! It is too dangerous, Charlotte! Oh, you know what? We'll just give her a chance and see what happens, okay? All right. Quickly, she packed a small bag with the items she thought that may come in handy. Then she strapped her wooden sword to her belt, threw on her cloak, pulled up the hood, and snuck out of the palace. Oh dear, The princess ran through the streets, barely feeling any strain in her muscles. The laps around the palace had really paid off. Practice makes perfect. In almost no time at all, she was close enough to catch her first glimpse of the monster. She slowed down, drew her sword, giving it a few confident swishes through the air. Oh, I'm so scared! Charlotte stabbed at a nearby street sign, hitting it dead center. She had trained hard and was becoming an excellent swordsman. But she's so young! Hey, didn't you just say her people should believe in her? I suppose that's true. Feeling ready, she sprinted to where the monster was lurking in the center of town. As she drew close, she slowed, hiding in the shadows to formulate her plan of attack. Well, that's very wise. Hiding, I mean. That's what I would do. The princess's studies had prepared her for this moment. Examine the landscape, find the best positions from which to attack, look for weaknesses in your opponent. As she studied the huge creature, she paused, confused. What was that on its head? Atop the beast's furry cranium sat a polka-dotted, cone-shaped hat with a colorful poof sprouting from the tip. A thin elastic string wrapped under the monster's chin, holding the hat firmly in place. But that sounds like a party hat, doesn't it? Why would a monster be wearing a party hat? Excellent question. Bewildered, Charlotte watched the creature, looking for further clues. The massive beast had slumped to the ground, looking terribly sad. As she watched, one huge, glistening tear dropped from the monster's eye onto its furry snout. Oh, poor thing. This monster wasn't here to attack anyone, the princess realized. It must be here for some other reason. But what? Thinking quickly, as she had trained herself to do, girls have quick minds. The princess thought through all the possibilities, settling on what seemed to be the most likely explanation. Charlotte began preparing her plan of attack. She's still going to attack? Wait and see. She opened her satchel, pulled out some thick paper and colorful pens, and got to work. Huh? As the beast sat snuffling sadly in the middle of the town square, its ears caught on a slight sound from the shadows across the street. Looking up, it spotted a very young, very small, very sweet-looking girl, slowly moving closer. It froze, waiting to see if the girl would scream and run away like everyone else had. But this girl was Princess Charlotte, and she was a warrior. She was a bit nervous, but she would not run away in fear. She was determined to help her people, her city, and the creature sitting in front of her. She walked slowly up to the beast and put one gentle hand on its enormous leg. That's very brave. She held out her other hand, something small and white clutched between her fingers. "This is for you." Cautiously, the monster reached out and took the paper from the princess. Opening it, there was a hand-drawn picture of the beast and the princess standing next to a massive cake. Scrawled across the top were the words, "Happy birthday." The monster smiled, a mildly terrifying sight thanks to a number of razor-sharp teeth, and patted the tiny princess gently on the head. She smiled back, overjoyed to find that her guess had been correct. "It's the monster's birthday!" Just then, the royal army arrived. "Oh no!" The king in the lead. They charged into the square, swords drawn, ready for battle. "No!" The monster bellowed in alarm, eyes rolling wildly. "Stop!" the princess shouted, her small arms thrown out in front of her, as though to protect the beast. "He's not dangerous! You don't need to fight him!" "Charlotte?" her father asked, bewildered. "My darling, what are you doing here?" Charlotte raised her chin, standing bravely before the army. "I came to prove my worth as a champion. I was going to fight the monster, but I didn't need to. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. And I don't think he meant to scare people either. It was just an accident." "But he caused damage to signposts all over the city," shouted the captain of the guard. "He tipped over Old Man Williker's wheelbarrow and spilled beets all over the ground. He broke the tables over on the patio at the Trainham's pub. My cabbages! His fur got all over the place and I'm super allergic, apparently." The princess raised her hands in supplication, trying to calm everyone down. "I don't think he meant to do any of that. He's just very big and has trouble fitting through the streets. He didn't mean to break anything, and he stopped moving once he got to the center of town since there's more space for him here. And I don't think he can help it if you're allergic to him, Sir Rodney." Sir Rodney looked down at his feet, embarrassed. The king, however, was unconvinced. "But why is he here? He clearly doesn't fit through the streets all that well. He may not have meant to damage things, but that could easily have been avoided if he'd just stayed away. Why did he come here?" Charlotte smiled up at the monster, who looked down at her with hopeful eyes. She reached out and put one hand on his massive paw. "It's his birthday. I think he just wanted to make some friends and celebrate together." The beast made a deep purring noise, smiling at the princess. He patted her gently on the head once more. "Well, well," the king said, scratching his beard. "It seems you may be right, my darling. It's a good thing you were here. We were ready to charge in and attack without even considering any other possibilities." Princess Charlotte smiled at her father. "That's why it's important to stop and examine the situation, Father. Didn't your studies ever teach you that?" "Ha!" He's her father. He always believed in her. Be respectful. The king laughed and walked over to his daughter, hugging her fondly. "Oh!" Turning to the creature, he bowed respectfully. "Welcome, dear beast. We're overjoyed you chose to spend your birthday with us. I hope this is the beginning of a wonderful friendship between you and our people." The beast smiled his toothy grin once more, then patted the king on the head. The soldiers and guards put away their swords and helped to clear a wide path through the city so the monster could travel safely. Then they all lined up, waving their flags in the air, and escorted the monster to the palace in a winding parade, the princess sitting high on the beast's shoulder. Oh, how comfy! As the parade passed through the city, the people waved and cheered, leaning out through their open windows. 3 cheers for our tiny champion! Hip, hip, hooray! Princess Charlotte smiled and waved to the crowds, delighted to hear their shouts of joy. It seemed like her people finally believed in her the same way her parents always had. She may have been very young, very small, and a very sweet little girl, but she was also a mighty champion. And no one ever doubted it again. As well they shouldn't. The end. Oh, that was lovely. It was pretty good, wasn't it? I think the most important thing is to remember, children, that no matter what people say your limitations are, you can do anything you put your mind to. It just requires hard work and believing in being yourself. I think you're right, Ermagine. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope that you'll continue to watch our stories. The puppets have done a lot of great stories themselves this week, including Ermagine. That's right! So if you haven't checked those out this week, go back. You can find them here on the YouTube page. I think there's a lot of fun stuff. And of course, Sunday, we're going to have a special Mother's Day story time. Oh, wonderful! So tune in with your moms and let them know how much you love them. And we'll see you again next time. Toodaloo!